Good afternoon. My name is Thorsteinn Björnsson, and I'm an officer in the EFTA's Internal Market Division, the IMD. I'm fully aware that the program is a little well behind schedule, and the good news is that I don't have a very long presentation, but of course you can feel free to ask questions in the end. Here at the Secretariat, I'm responsible for the policy areas of research and innovation, as well as education, training, and youth. And I'm also responsible for the so-called EEA EFTA budget, which consists of the three EFTA states' financial contributions to the several EU programs and agencies in which these countries participate on the basis of the EEA agreement. So, as many of you will know, the EU's multi-annual financial framework, or which you call the MFF on a daily basis, for the period between 2021 and 2027, was adopted late last year. And on this basis, several new program regulations were published last spring. And the EFTA Secretariat has been working hard to incorporate many of the new legal acts into the agreement in order to ensure smooth participation of our member states in 13 new EU programs. EFTA participation in EU programs has always been an important part of the European Economic Area. As with other parts of the agreement, it has developed over time with larger scope, higher budget, and increasing complexity of EU programs. It is safe to say that few areas of the agreement have touched the lives of so many as have, for example, the education, training, and mobility program Erasmus, which maybe some of you have benefited from, or the research and innovation program Horizon, or Creative Europe on culture and creativity, only to name a few. In my presentation, I will be focusing on EFTA participation in the next generation of EU programs that are starting this year and will be running until 2027. And I will touch upon the rights and obligations of EFTA states in such activities, and financial contributions of Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway to the program budgets. Unfortunately, we will not be able to discuss in any detail the content or funding opportunities in these 13 specific programs. And for this purpose, you will be able to benefit from an extensive network of national agencies and contact points that are dedicated to promotion of programs and assistance to applicants. We will come back to this at the end of my intervention. So, Part 6 of the EEA agreement, Article 78 to 88 on cooperation outside the four freedoms, which are loosely summarized on this first slide, provides the framework for the EFTA states' participation in EU programs. So the contracting parties shall strengthen and broaden cooperation on matters falling outside of the four freedoms, where such cooperation is considered likely to contribute to the attainment of the objectives of the agreement, or is otherwise deemed to be of mutual interest. This normally takes the form of EFTA states' participation in EU framework programs, specific programs, projects, or other actions. So here it's important to note that participation in EU programs is voluntary for the three EFTA countries, and subject to agreement with the EU as further defined in Protocol 32. Protocol 31, however, is regularly updated to include new and amended program regulations that the parties jointly decide to incorporate into the agreement. And actually next week we will have an important milestone when 10 out of 13 new program regulations should be incorporated into Protocol 31. And actually one has already been incorporated, and then two others will hopefully follow shortly. And now to the rights and obligations on this slide, which I don't expect you to read from the screen. You will see a screenshot of an info sheet that is posted on our website, and you should be able to access. And I will share the link later on. This info sheet underscores the right to participate in EU programs derives from the EEA agreement, which provides for a closer partnership than conventional association agreement the EU has with other third countries. So the basic terms and conditions thus haven't changed since the entry into force of the agreement in 1994, and are not renegotiated for each new programming period. Most importantly, Article 81 stipulates that the EFTA states shall have access to all parts of programs in which they participate. And furthermore, it specifies that at project level, institutions, undertakings, organizations, and nationals of the EFTA states shall have the same rights and obligations as those of the EU member states. So in essence, any legislative or administrative restrictions placed on the EFTA countries would stand in contradiction to the EEA agreement. And as I emphasized, this is a much closer relationship than you would see with other associated countries, which have different types of association agreements. We could mention the UK or Switzerland or Turkey. It depends on the program. So nothing basically comes as close to being a full member of the EU in terms of the program participation as the EEA agreement. So this is very important for us to uphold these principles. And it is becoming increasingly complex sometimes with the various types of association agreements that we are constantly being compared with. And the EFTA Secretariat works very closely together with the member states and the European External Action Service in guarding these principles. So now to the financial contribution. So our member countries obviously contribute financially to the programs in which they participate. And the modalities for their contributions are set down in Article 82 of the EEA agreement. And each payment is established as a proportion of the EU's annual budget towards its specific programs, which means that basically by using a formula that takes the GDP of our member countries compared with the GDP of the EU, we get a certain proportionality factor, as you call it, for calculating the contribution for each of the member states. And it's sometimes different how many of our member states do take part in certain programs. So the proportionality factor will may differ based on which countries do participate at each given time. So to give you an idea on the size of these financial commitments, then in last year, 2020, this was close to 500 million euros for 13 programs. And now for the current year, with the new programs entering into force, we are likely to see a contribution which is closer to 600 million euros in total. And this amount is actually expected to rise even further in coming years, as the new programs are heading towards the peak of their implementation. And back to the proportionality factor. So in 2021, this year, compared to the size of the EU budget, the EFTA states, when all three are participating, such as in the Erasmus Plus program, the EFTA states will contribute 2.7% of the EU budget, which comes on top of the program budget. And of course, there are also other associated countries contributing to the programs. So this is then again added on top of the EU budget. And due to its relative size in the EEA EFTA context, Norway actually contributes 93% of the EFTA contribution, when all three are participating. And Iceland's share is 5.5 and Liechtenstein 1.5% approximately. And there are actually two programs that are by far the most important ones in terms of the budget, and those are Horizon Europe and Erasmus Plus. And Horizon Europe actually in this current year makes up around 60% of the entire EEA EFTA budget. And this will next year go to 57%. And for Erasmus Plus, the same numbers are 13% for this year and 16% for next year. So these two, as I say, account for 2/3 of the entire EEA EFTA budget. And again, it's important to stress that for this contribution, the EFTA stakeholders have absolutely equal access in competing for grants, and most of this contribution is distributed based on open calls for proposals. For example, it is not coherent with the EEA agreement to limit, for example, certain calls to EU countries only or something like this. There should be totally equal access to the funds. So now to my final slide. On this one, you will find basically a list. I hope it's visible to everyone here in the EFTA house. Hopefully it's clearer online. You will find a list of the new 13 programs in which the EFTA states are planning to participate until 2027. And you will see also below the title of each program in red which countries are participating in each one of them. And you will note that none of the three are participating in all 13. With Norway, for example, opting out of the European Solidarity Corps and the LIFE program on climate and environment. And Iceland is also opting out of the European Defence Fund. And Liechtenstein is actually taking part only in 6 out of the 13 overall. In addition, I could also say that in some cases our member states are only participating in certain program components, so not in the programs in their entirety. I could here mention the European Space Program, where Iceland has opted for partial participation in this way. And as well as I could also mention the Single Market Program, where some elements of it have been deemed irrelevant to the EEA. And in such cases, then, of course, the financial contribution is adjusted accordingly. So if you take a look at these programs, maybe you know some or many of them. Horizon Europe is a research and innovation program. Erasmus Plus on education, training and youth. European Space Program, it focuses on basically satellite systems such as Galileo and Copernicus. Digital Europe was mentioned before by Trond. Then the European Defence Fund, the health program EU for Health, which is has a broader scope than before with the pandemic, as a response to the pandemic, of course. The Union Civil Protection Mechanism, which focuses on preparedness, preparation, and response to disasters. Creative Europe on culture and media. European Social Fund, Single Market Program, LIFE on climate and environment. European Solidarity Corps, which is focused on volunteering and traineeships, etc. for 18 to 30-year-olds. And then finally Invest EU, which is actually the one that is furthest behind and will not be incorporated in the coming week since it still needs to be negotiated or figured out which part of this program the EFTA states will participate, and it's basically a collaboration with financial institutions such as the EIB, the European Investment Bank, possibly also the Nordic Investment Bank, and is based on investment guarantees, but I will not go into any detail on this. It's also important to note that although the program regulations that we are expected to incorporate next week are quite will be incorporated quite late as to what we would have liked. They will all have retroactive effect from the 1st of January of this year. So basically this means that applicants from Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway are already participating in actions supported by the new programs, despite this late incorporation, which has mainly come about due to the late publication of the legal acts in the official journal of the European Union. So, finally, how can you participate? Well, I will partly try to dodge that question by saying that the EFTA Secretariat has a very limited role in promoting participation or assisting applicants in these programs. But at the bottom of this slide here, you will find a hyperlink to our website, where you will be directed to the Europa website of the European Commission, which contains quite detailed information about funding opportunities and application procedures. And as previously mentioned, there is a wide network of national agencies and contact points operated in most program countries, including Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway. And you should also be able to find their contact information on the Europa website. So basically, especially for the largest program, there's a quite extensive operation or network of agencies where you can find such direct support in your own language, or you can find also, as I say, more centrally on the EU's own website. I was going to open this website and show you also a couple of links and a video, but given the time, I'm not sure if that is appropriate at this moment in time. But of course, I presume this will be circulated to the participants, and you can check it out for yourselves. And of course, if there are any questions, of course I will do my best to answer them properly.
Thank you, Thorsteinn. Yes, there are some questions. We will try to limit them, but I don't want to discourage you, though.
Oh yes, then apologies for asking my third one. Well, I'm August from ECD. So I was wondering, so public-private partnerships are quite important in the Horizon programs, as far as I've read. And I was wondering whether the Secretariat or someone else, as a part of the negotiations, work to have EEA EFTA companies be a part of these partnerships.
Yeah, I didn't get the last part of your question. Could you please elaborate?
So whether so you have, for instance, the technology and innovation platforms, such as Batteries Europe, in which companies play an important role in the governing bodies.
Yeah.
And I was wondering whether this is something that is a part of the work of the Secretariat or the national ministries, or whether this is, again, something that is then more controlled at the EU levels and happens maybe more or less organically.
Right. here, as you probably heard earlier today, here at the Secretariat, we work very closely with our member state experts in the so-called working groups. And at the Secretariat, we assist the working groups in their work, and we draw on expertise from the Commission, for example, from DG Research. So whenever there is an issue like this, we facilitate, but I wouldn't necessarily say that we have at the Secretariat any sort of direct expertise or even intervention that is more led by the experts and the counselors in the missions. So I think I would simply respond to your question in that general way, that this is more sort of the role of our member states. But that said, it's also highly important, as I mentioned in my presentation, that we should have the same access to the progress, and that also means that we do have our experts in the Commission's program committees and in different working groups that have been over previous years basically been working on the content of a program like Horizon. But there is maybe a slight issue with the EEA agreement, since we are always a little bit behind in the incorporation, that when it comes to participation in early stages, even before the program regulation for Horizon was adopted, that there were already some initiatives starting, like platforms, as you referred to. So sometimes it's quite important for us at the Secretariat and also the member states to be on the ball to make sure that we have representation in sort of these more informal preparatory stages. So I don't know if this answered your question directly, but yeah, it's again very important that we do monitor what is happening with sort of these political initiatives that are not necessarily based on the same method of open calls as the main part of the programs will be.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, then thank you again, Thorsteinn.